And today concept is about knowing a second way of representing the semantic actions or semantic rules, that is syntax directed translation scheme. And here why to implement the syntax directed translation scheme means first we need to build a parse tree and then performing the actions in an left to right by using the depth first order traversal. Make a note of this. Here we are implementing the depth first travel. That means we are using a depth first travel. And while coming to the synthesized attributes, there we used an post order traversal. And in an inherited attributes, there we used an pre-order traversal. And here while coming to the translation scheme, we are using an depth first order traversal, right? And here what type of translation schemes that we are performing here is and initially converting the expression into the converting from infix to postfix, converting the expression from infix to postfix. Then each semantic action can be placed at the end of the production and executed along with the reduction of body to the head of the production. And here we have seen that the attributes are specified for each grammar symbols of the given productions, and these attributes are used to evaluate the expression along the process of parsing, and we can call it as an exactly at the same time some semantic rules are applied, right? So during the process of parsing, the evaluation of attributes takes place by the consulting the semantic actions enclosed in braces. See, here we're having an example for that. Once all of you see the slide, then you can easily understand what I am saying. During the process of parsing, the evaluation of attributes takes place by consulting the semantic actions enclosed in braces at the right of the grammar symbol. See what I enclosed here, only at the right of the grammar symbol. That means e E, E1 plus T, T, T1 star T, F, and here we're not taking the parenthesis, just only we're taking an E node, that is an E, and finally digit with an lex because always the digits are defined from the lexical analyzers. So we're taking from the lex and as it is an synthesized attribute. Why? Because here we're implementing or processing in an bottom up fashion, and whatever the attributes that are associated with the nodes, we are calling them as a nodes. Attributes associated with the nodes are dot val attributes. Make a note of this dot val. See in the slide, there is an example where the grammar consisting of some set of rules, and for each and every rule there is a corresponding semantic action written there. And what it means is the semantic actions are the rules for the corresponding production rules. These are the semantic actions for the corresponding rules. L tends to En, E tends to E1 plus T, E tends to T, T tends to T1 star F, T tends to F tends to open parenthesis, E closed parenthesis, and finally F tends to ID. And it is just a representation of an synthesized attribute. Make a note here. We define and synthesize syntax directed definition for only the synthesized attributes just by giving the attributes for each and every node, just by defining the attributes for each and every node. And when the process of parsing will be done, for the question like that, here we're having an answer. If any semantic action is enclosed with the braces at the right of the grammar symbol, then the meaning of that is there is a need to process of the parsing, and now there is a need to process of the parsing. That means during the processing of the evaluation of the attributes, we are performing this, we are writing in such a way that how we are writing means just by enclosing with an braces, the semantic action is enclosed with an braces. Previously in an synthesized and an inherited attributes, we didn't represent and braces. Make a note of this. There are no braces representations. When we are writing the semantic actions for the synthesized and the inherited, we are not using the braces there, and here we are using the braces. What it means is whatever the action that we performed, that is enclosed in an braces when we are performing or processing the translation schemes, right? I think you all understand now. And this process of execution of the code fragments of the semantic actions from the syntax directed definition is called as an syntax directed translation. That is, execution of syntax directed definition. Here, execution of syntax directed definition can be done by the syntax directed translation scheme. And here we need to know most important 2 points. What the first point is, whatever the translation processing that we are doing, that is the translation scheme, generates the output by executing the semantic actions in an ordered manner. So everything should be in an ordered manner here. That is the point number one to be noticed. And what the next point is, whatever the processing we are doing, that processing is done by using an depth first traversal. Depth first traversal. Make a note of these 2 points. Most important when we are explaining for the syntax directed translation schema. And this is an example that we are representing an synthesized attribute with syntax directed definition, and just by taking the grammar and writing all the rules under the grammar, and then writing an corresponding semantic action for each and every rule. And here we enclosed each and every action with an braces. That's the other thing that we done here in a translation scheme. But whatever we done, the giving or defining the attributes for the nodes and all these are all as it is in an synthesized attributes. Nothing differ is there. The only one difference is only we are placing an braces like this. That means we are enclosing the semantic action. We are enclosing the semantic action for the production rule, right? And now here I am parsing with an stack. That is, I am implementing the stack. How to implement this stack? And before knowing to see the example, before knowing how the implementation takes place with an example, first there are some guidelines of designing the translation schemas. What the guidelines are, what the guidelines to be followed is, there is one instruction that if is for every semantic action, if it refers to some attribute, then that attribute value must be computed before that attribute gets referred. Make a note of this. And the second one is, here we are using the computation of an synthesized attributes. Why? Because synthesized attributes are very easy to compute. So we are using an synthesized attributes. That means computation of the synthesized attribute is very easy. And see, we are having an example here. What the example is, the example consisting of the states like an x, y and z, where x, y and z are the nodes, right? And for each and every node there is an attribute. There is a defined attribute with dot a, dot b and dot c. We no need to bother about what the dot a, dot b and dot c. Here what the meaning of this representation is, whatever the variables, that means the nodes you are reading from, that is when we are scanning the input from left to right, when we are performing the scanning operation by scanning the input from left to right and by using a depth first traversal, and here whatever the non-terminal that is whatever the node that I read or that I scan from the input buffer should be pushed onto the stack, should be pushed onto the stack. Make a note of this. if if it is an terminal, if it is an terminal, pop there itself, pop there itself. That's the implementation of the stack in this syntax directed translation schema. What it means is, here I'm having three variables, that is these are the three nodes in the given grammar. I am calling them as an either it may be a state symbol or the grammar symbol. And here I represented an attribute with a dot representation. Here I defined an attributes. So I am defining it as an synthesized attributes. And after reading the x is pushed onto the stack. After reading the y is pushed onto the stack. And after reading z is pushed onto the stack. Then now coming to the stack representation. Now which node is on the top of the stack? Z, right? And which node is on the top -1? Y, right? Which node is on the top -2? X. That means this is top of the stack. This is giving the position of the nodes in the stack. What it means is giving the position of the nodes when we push it onto the stack. And Z is on the top of the stack, right? and this y becomes a top minus 1 position and x becomes a top minus 2 position, isn't it? This is the way of representing the stack. And when we are parsing with an stack implementation of the postfix syntax directed translation schemas, what it means is, after taking the input in the form of the expression, first initially we need to convert that input from infix to postfix, right? Converting the expression from infix to postfix, then only the postfix expression is taken by processing the syntax directed translation schemas by using the depth first traversals. Make a note of this most important point. Now, what are the rules to be followed during the parsing? That means what type of and semantic actions that need to follow during the parsing. Here, when shifting and when reducing, that means as per the terminologies of the parser, we are having the basic operations like a shift, reduce, error, and accept, right? So when to shift and when to reduce, as coming to the terminology of the stack, when to push and when to pop. Is it clear now? And when shifting, push the values of the terminal on the semantic stack. When reducing, pop k values, that means the terminals from the semantic stack, where k is the number of symbols on the productions of the RHS. We are only popping the right hand side of the production. That means we are popping the body of the production. We are popping the body of the production which it appears on the right hand side of the rule, right? So we are not popping the left hand side part. We are popping the right hand side part. But what we are shifting the left hand side part. Make a note of this. And these are the most important points to be remember and to be noticed when we are implementing the translation schemas or writing the semantic actions along with the stack. That means here with the implementation of the stack, next in the next slides I will give the example. There the semantic actions are can be written with the stack implementation, not as we already done here in the slide, previous slide, that is writing the semantic actions or writing and syntax directed definitions in an synthesized attributes or in an inherited attributes or are not same for writing the semantic actions for the syntax directed schemes when we are implementing with an stack. Both these are not similar, right? This is different from the synthesized and the inherited. But at starting of the class I show you the example that, see the example here, I'm having an example here. What the example defines is every action is enclosed with the braces. That means we need to process the parser. We need to process the parser. During the process of parsing, some semantic actions takes place. And what type of an action that was takes place means, and just by seeing the enclosed part, then we can easily understand which action was takes place. That means the semantic action is enclosed at the right of the grammar symbol, and it consults that what type of an evaluation that we need to do, at the part of an semantic action, right? So, and this representation is differ when we are implementing with an stack. Writing the semantic actions are same, but representing with an stack is differ. And what the syntax directed translations with actions inside the productions. And here before slide I explained about during the parsing what type of the semantic actions are, and here the slide is about the syntax directed translations with actions inside the production, right? Inside the production. And see here we're having some important points. Action can be placed at any position in the production body, right? Because it may be in the right hand side or it may be in the left hand side. Any position in the production body, the action can be takes place. And when the action is performed immediately, after all the symbols left is left, whatever the symbols that are on the left hand side are to be processed. That means the left hand side symbols are processed immediately when the action is performed. And then here we're having an example. See, b tends to x, and here it is enclosed with an action a is in terminal, and then y, and an action a is done. When the action a is done, after we have recognized the x, right? After recognizing the x, then we recognize the a. That means and action A is done after the X, or sometimes all the terminals derived from the X if X is a non-terminal. For example, X is another rule. X is defined with another rule. So whatever the rules that we are having for the X, all the rules or all the terminals for that non-terminal, all the terminals for that non-terminal should be derived. And then now it is the action inside the production. If it is an bottom up parser, we're having two types of parsing techniques, right? One is a bottom up parser and another one is a top down parser. If the bottom up parser is used, then what type of an action A is to be performed? If a top down parser is used, then what type of an action that A is performed? When we are using the bottom up parser, the A is performed as soon as X appears on the top of the stack. Make a note. If the top down parser is used, then the action A is only performed. The action A is only performed. We need not to bother about the non-terminal X, right? And what it means is just before Y is expanded. What it means, if Y is a non-terminal or either it may be a terminal, we need to check on the input what the next symbol to be generated, right? And any syntax directed translation can be implemented as follows. And first one is, we should ignore the actions and then parse the input and finally produce the parse tree. These are the three steps to be followed when we are implementing the syntax directed translation schema. Initially ignoring all the actions and then parse the input and finally producing the parse trees. And for the example, like if we are having A tends to alpha is a production, right? A tends to alpha is a production, and here we need to add the additional children to the node n for the action in alpha. What it means is, if you're having such type of an actions, we need to ignore those, and then we need to pass the input and finally we need to produce the parse tree. And here performing or using the pre-order traversal of the parse tree. Why? Because here the top down parsing is the top down, when we are using this top down parsing, when we are implementing or computing the inherited attributes, right? So performing an pre-order traversal of the tree, and as soon as a node labeled by an action is visited, and then perform that action. These are the steps to be followed when we are implementing the parser with an stack. That means when we are implementing the semantic actions with an stack. This is the most important example. Once all of you see here, one column is about the production and the second column is about the action. And here whatever the productions from the given grammar, just we are writing like this. And here with the stack implementation, I am performing the semantic actions, and every action is enclosed with the braces. Make a note of this. Every action is enclosed with an braces. And initially whatever the value that I get for the node E, that value is assigned to the root node of the given grammar, right? Isn't it? So what I need to do here, to know the value of E, I need to compute E1 plus T, right? To know the value of T, I need to compute the rule T1 star F, right? Isn't it? To know what the F is, I need to compute either directly, it may be a digit, or sometimes if my expression consisting of an parenthesis like this, then I need to choose and rule like this, right? Is it clear now? So what it means is, to get an value of L, where it is in starting node of the given grammar, I need to compute E, then I need to compute T, and then I need to compute F, isn't it? And the F value is assigned to the T, and the computed value for the T is assigned to the E, and the computed value for the E is assigned to the L. I think, did you get it? So now I am writing the semantic actions. Whatever the production that I am taking, here the production number 1 is L tends to E. N is a constant, no need to bother about the N. So if you are having the terminals, no need to write for those terminals, no need to write the stack implementation for those terminals. That is, you don't need to perform any type of a semantic action for the terminals. Only for the non-terminals you need to perform. And N is a constant, right? N is a constant. But L tends to E. What it mean? L is equal to E or E is equal to L, right? And when I am pushing this non-terminal E onto the stack, then it is the starting symbol, that is it is on top of the stack, right? It is on top of the stack, and I want an value for the L. Again I am pushing this non-terminal onto the stack, then my top of the stack becomes an L and my top minus 1 becomes an E, isn't it? What it means is top is equal to top minus 1. Top is equal to top minus 1. That what I'm printing here, this is the top minus 1 position in the stack, right? So what I'm printing, print stack of top minus 1 dot val. Val is an attribute for that node. Val is an attribute for that node. In the stack, in the place of that node E, I'm having in position that top minus 1. I'm having in position top minus 1. So finally what I'm printing, I need to print the topmost value on the stack. And when I'm pushing all the two nodes onto the stack, then my top of the stack is an L and top minus 1 is an E. Then finally I'm writing like this, top is equal to top minus 1, right? And see in the second rule, E tends to E1 plus T. E tends to E1 plus T. And push this right hand side of the production rule onto the stack. Push this right hand side production rule onto this stack. Now this becomes an top. This becomes an top, right? After computing this, the value is obtained to the E. The value is obtained to the E. Then this value is obtained to the L, isn't it? So what it mean? And E1 plus T. These three are pushed onto this stack. These three are pushed onto this stack. Now, what is on the top of the stack? What is on the top of the stack now? And my top of the stack is, see here. What is on the top of the stack? When I'm pushing this E1 plus T onto the stack, E1 is pushed onto the stack, plus is pushed onto the stack, and T is pushed onto the stack, right? And here top is equal to top minus 2. What it mean? Top is equal to top minus 2. What it is? That is stack of top minus 2 dot val is equal to that. Here I'm having the node E, and here also I'm having the node E, right? So this is equal to this one. That is, in my stack, the top minus 2 position is having the node E. Top minus 2 position is for the E, and plus is for the top minus 1, but T is for the top. T is for the top. And my top of the stack is T now. In the stack, when I'm checking onto the stack, the topmost position for the stack is T now. And top minus 1 is an plus, top minus 2 is an E, right? So stack of top minus 2 dot val is equal to stack of top minus 2 dot val plus stack of top dot val. What it means is top is equal to top minus 2. Top is equal to top minus 2. That is, here what the top is, the obtained value for the E is assigned to the node L, right? And top is equal to top minus 2. And here top minus 2 is an E1, right? E. I am taking it as an E. So top is equal to top minus 2. Is it clear now? And what it means, E is equal to T or T is equal to T? E, whatever it may be. No need to bother, it is an E is equal to T or T is equal to E. And here this is suitable for the associated production rule, corresponding production rule for E tends to T. This is an top is equal to top minus 2, right? And while coming to here in the third rule, in the fourth rule, and again the right hand side of the rule, again the right hand side of the production is pushed onto the stack. Now which one becomes top minus 2? T. T becomes top minus 2, star becomes top minus 1, F is on the top of the stack, right? So stack of top minus 2 dot val is equal to stack of top minus 2 dot val into stack of top dot val, right? That means top is equal to top minus 2. And here I'm not writing any semantic action for this rule. And F tends to open parenthesis, E closed parenthesis. Here for the terminals I am not writing any action, not performing any action. Directly what it means is F is equal to E. Here it is F is equal to E. That is the top minus 2 is equal to top minus 1. Right. Top minus 2 is equal to top minus 1. That is finally how I am writing it is top is equal to top minus 1. I need this one. Top is equal to top minus 1. So F is equal to E. F is equal to E. Already E is in the position of top minus 1. Right. And F is in the position of top minus 2 here. Because this top is assigned to an F. That this is top and this is top minus 2. So stack of top minus 2 is equal to stack of top minus 1. Right. This is the way of writing or performing the semantic actions by implementing with the stack. By implementing with the stack. Nothing is there, whatever the right hand productions we are having, right hand of the production body, just we are pushing all those symbols onto the stack and just defining which one is in top and which one is in top minus 1 and which one is in top minus 2. Finally, we need an output for the starting symbol of the given grammar. So the actions are associated along with that. For the corresponding rules, every action is associated along with the implementation of the stack, right? This is the concept about with this representation, the concept of syntax directed scheme is completed. Syntax directed translation scheme is completed. And now, after knowing the parsing techniques, what the top down parsing or the top down parser and what are the techniques under the top down, and what are bottom up parsing techniques and what are LR types of LR parsers, and after knowing the construction steps and all those, and then directly we didn't enter into the learning process of semantic analysis. That means directly we didn't enter the implementation of the semantic analysis here. As per the definition of the semantic analysis, what the role of the semantic analysis in the compilation process? To check the meaning of the generated parse tree, right? And that means the parse tree was generated from the syntax analyzer. For the same input, what we are doing with the semantic analyzer, just we are checking out, doing some corrections if any mistakes in the meaning, in the form of meaning, right? So directly we didn't enter into the type checkings or type conversions or type expressions or type systems and all those. And initially, after generating the corresponding parse trees from the constructed parsing tables, next what we done is we need to know how the translations takes place for the syntax analyzers, right? Oh, again, these are all handled by the semantic analysis. That's why here for every production rule, we are writing the semantic action. That means we are giving the meaning of each and every rule. It's there itself, not for the overall grammar. For each and every rule there itself, we are writing we are defining the semantic actions. Make clear. That means after generating the parse tree by implementing the syntax analyzer, by constructing such all those types of parsing techniques, the output is in the form of an parse tree, right? And again, we are not directly taking that parse tree for say type checkings or for type conversions and for the concepts under the semantic analysis. That means the internal functionalities of the semantic analysis. What we are doing here, instead of directly learning the semantic analysis phase, in between what we are doing, we are implementing the translations. That means here to implement the translations, we need the semantic analysis. Why? Because semantic analysis is having an advantage. What the advantage is? It is always in static in nature. So we are using the semantic analysis to handle these types of translation schemes, to handle these types of syntax directed translations. So after knowing what the syntax directed translation, then to define or to represent the semantic actions, what the ways that we are having, and learning about each and every way of writing or representing the semantic actions. And then finally we concluded the implementation of the translations by handling with the semantic analysis. Now it's time to know the fundamental concepts or fundamental most important things under the semantic analysis. The first one is type checking, right? The first one is in type checking. Then how to define the type expressions and what are the type constructs, and then type conversions. So before knowing about all these, first initially what we need to know is what is the need of this semantic analysis. What is the need of this semantic analysis? Then after going to learn about each and individual concept just by briefing out what the definition and how to identify the errors. First initially we need to know the definition of the each and every concept, and then knowing about how to identify the errors. Why? Because if in each and every phase there are commonly occurred errors are there. That means we can easily handle those errors at the time of implementation, right? So if you know such type of an errors, it is easy to implement the semantic analyzers. So for that, to knowing about what type of an errors, what type of an commonly occurring errors, or how to check the meaning of the code fragment while we are constructing for the programming language. And for all these, we are having the answer in the previous slides. And first initially to know what is the need of semantic analysis, and this semantic analysis is done in order to obtain the precise meaning. Make a note of this. To obtain the precise meaning of the programming constructs, we are using or we are implementing this semantic analysis. And in this phase, the semantic analysis also can be known as a static semantic analysis. Static semantic analysis. What is the main need of this semantic analysis means, firstly we need to build a symbol table that keeps tracks of names establishing in the declarations. That is the first thing we need to do. And what the second thing is, defining the data types, and it may be an defining of the data types of the identifiers is obtained, and the type checking of the whole expression and the statements is done in order to follow the type rules of the languages. And here the next thing is to identify the scope of identifiers, identifying the scope of identifiers. And coming after knowing the need of the semantic analysis, these are the points comes under the why to learn the semantic analysis and what is the need of this semantic analysis. And now entering into the concept, that is what is type checking. What is type checking? We can also take it as a type analysis or type checking, and it is very important activity that to be done in the semantic analysis phase. Type checking plays a major role here. And what is the need of this type checking is to detect the errors arising in the expressions due to incompatible operands. That is the first thing. And second one is to generate an intermediate code for the expressions and the statements. And here typically any type of a language supports two types of data types. One we can call them as in basic data types, and the second one is called as in constructed data types. Now we are having a question, and what are the basic data types and what are the constructed data types? For example, well-known data types like an integer, character, real, boolean, and enumerated, all these are all comes under the basic data types. And arrays, records, structures or sets or pointers, all this comes under the constructed data types, right? And here the constructed data types are built using an basic data types. That's the connectivity between these two types of data types, right? And this is about an type checking. And here we're having the role of the type checker. Type checker can also be called as a static checker. Static checker. And this is the role of the type checker. What initially starts with the source program. Here my source input is a token of strings, and those token of strings are given to the parser as an input. And now by performing the parsing techniques, finally I generated an output in the form of an parse tree, and we also call it as an abstract syntax tree. And this is given to the semantic analysis as an input. And now by using the static checkers in the semantic analysis, the implementation takes place, and finally it generates an decorated abstract syntax tree. Make a note of this. After performing the static checker, that is in semantic analysis, the output should not be changed from the parser and the semantic analyzer, right? But what it is, just we are checking out the meaning whether it is in a precise meaning or not. That means we're obtaining a precise meaning for each and every thing that we generated from the parser. So we're performing a type checking here, and then finally we're generating the output in the form of an decorated abstract syntax trees. Decorated in the sense something we modified there, something we rectify, any type of an error, or we done and any type of an updation. So we named it as a decorated abstract syntax tree. And then it is acting as an input to the intermediate code generator. To perform an intermediate code generator, it is rest of the compiler. The remaining thing is for the rest of the compiler. But here our concept is about a semantic analysis. So we need to know what the type checking is and how the static checker plays a role in an process of compilation, right? And that means in the phase of semantic analysis, we are using a static semantic analysis. That means we are performing the type checkings here. Type checkings can also be called as in static checkings, right? It is the role of the type checker here. And what the static checks are? Static checks. Here, while coming to the static checks or type checkings, here we're having different types of checks, like type check, flow of control check, uniqueness checks, and name related checks. And what is type check? As already explained, the definition of the type checking, or one of the most important point, that means detecting the errors arising in the expression due to incompatible operands. That is the most important definition for the type checking, and it is also an important point for the question like what is the need of using these type checkings, right? And initially to detect the errors we are performing all these, and what the flow of control checks means, here some statements causes the flow of control to leave a construct. That means for example branching to non-existent labels. For example, if you know the concept of an directed acyclic graph or data flow graphs, and there we can see such type of an flow of control checks, right? And what the uniqueness check means, whatever the objects we are defining, it should be defined only once, this is true in many languages. And here the next one is a name related checks. What it means, sometimes the same name must appear two or more times, and if you get an error like this, then the name of the error is a name related checks, right? That means the same name that you are using in two or more places, or two or more times, then such type of checks can be called as a name related checks. And these are all comes under the subcategorized of static checks. Now, what is a type system? What is a type system? To know what is a type system is nothing but a combination of the type expressions and the type constructs. Make a note. Combination of type expressions and the type constructs. That means the compiler must determine the type expression which it should conform to collect the logical rules. We were calling it as a type system, right? And what is a type expression here? What is a type expression? And a type expression informally or formally, here we are defining it as an informal type expression. Informally, a type expression is either a basic type or is formed by applying an operator called a type constructor to the other type expression. That means here we are knowing about the type constructs and then knowing about the type conversions from the type expressions. And the systematic way of expressing the type of the language construct is called as a type expression. That means here it is either from the basic type, right? What the basic types are, either it may be an int, char, float, double, and so on and so on from the type checkings, right? Either it may be from the basic type or applying an operator, or is formed by applying an operator. How it is formed by applying an operator means, while performing the type checking, two special basic types are needed here. What are those means? One is a type error and the second one is a void, void. And what is a type error means, it always reports the errors. Occurred during the type checkings. And what do you mean by void? Void indicates that there is no type, that is a null associated with the statement, right? So these are the two most important points in when we're defining the type expressions here. And what the type constructs are. What the type constructs means, here the type constructs are also can be called as in type expressions, but the type constructs are called as an constructed types like arrays, product, struct, pointers, functions. All those are all comes under the type constructs. And here we're having some of the type constructs I explained here. And once you all know what the error and what the product is, here we're applying in Cartesian product. That means we're performing the Cartesian product between two expressions. So we're called the type, it is an construct product type. The name of the type construct, it is an product. And array is nothing but an, for example, we are writing the array representation with the array of I comma t. What it means is I is an index set, which usually an integer, and the data type of the array elements is given by the t, and that is the representation of the arrays. And other more like records, pointers, functions, all this comes under the type expressions here, right? And finally, type system. A type system is a collection of rules for assigning the type expressions to the various parts of a program, is nothing but an type system. Here in type checker implements a type system. Make a note of this. Type checker implements an type system. And what the static and dynamic checking is, and you all need to know when to perform the static checkers and when to perform the dynamic checkers. And when the checking done by the compiler is in static and the checking done at the runtime is in dynamic. Make a note of this. Checking done by the compiler is static, and if it is done at the runtime, then it is an dynamic checking. That means at there we can easily find out the errors, right? After at the place of compilation, we can easily find out the errors. If you know what the static and what the dynamic, what the meaning of the static and dynamic means, then you can easily understand. Checking done by the compilers at the when I am performing in compilation, what I will get an output or I will get an errors. Obviously I will get an errors, right? So when I'm performing at the runtime, then what I will get, it will ask for the input, right? It will ask for the input. That's why it is a static check at compile, and at runtime it is a dynamic check. Error recoveries. Every phase itself, it is having an error recovery strategies. What it means is, by using an error handler as a subphase, by using the error handler, we are handling some commonly occurred errors at each and every phase itself, and there itself we are modifying those, and we are updating the code, and then finally we are generating the output. That means whatever the output we are generating, there itself is an error-free output. So error recovery strategies, how we are implementing this error recovery strategies means, for example, we are learning about a semantic analysis. We know what type of an errors that can be occurred at the semantic analysis. So we can easily handle those, and we can easily detect those, and we can easily recover those there itself, right? So this type checker plays a major role to perform this error recovery strategies. That means error discovering is done by the type checkers. And the final concept, that is an conversion. What before knowing about what the coercions is, first initially we need to know what the type conversion is. Type conversion, the definition of the type conversion is nothing but a process of converting from one type to the another type. It may be any type of a data type, or sometimes it may be basic data types, only between the basic data types. And while coming to the constructed data types, there we are not converting the constructed data types. So here the type conversion is for the basic types. And here we need to know what the implicit conversion and what the explicit conversion is, because type conversions can be divided into two types. One is implicit and another one is an explicit conversion. When to say that it is an implicit? If the conversion is done automatically by the compiler, then it is an implicit conversion. So this is done by the coercions, that concept coercions. We are naming it as an coercions. And here, if it is automatically done by the compilers, means there is no loss of information. There is no loss of information. But coming to the explicit conversion, if the programmer specially writes something for converting one type to the another type, right? So it is an explicit conversion. Here there may be a chance to loss of information from the lines of the code. So these are the two types of conversions, implicit and explicit. After knowing the definition of the conversion, what the types of conversions are, two types, and what is coercion means this conversion, that means automatically whatever the conversion that is done automatically by the compiler, that can be called it as an implicit, and also it can also be called it as an coercions, right? Is it clear now? These are the most important fundamental concepts under the semantic analysis. With this, the overall third unit was completed, and whatever the concepts under the unit number 3, everything was completed, because I delivered each and every concept under the unit number 3, and no more left. And the continuation of this semantic analyzer is the next phase of the compilation, that is intermediate code generator. Up to this, from starting of the unit 2 and ending of the unit 3, what we know, what we learned, what we understand, what I make you to understand, that means what type of an abilities that you get is there itself, knowing about how many types of approaches are there. We are not directly drawing the parse trees from the generated output from the lexical analyzer, right? There we are implementing some techniques. By knowing what type of and techniques, what are the approaches in the syntax analyzers, and what the techniques under those approaches, and then not directly going into the semantic analysis just by performing the type checkings or type conversions or type expressions, or finally it is a type system, not directly going with a semantic analysis. In between we learn something, what that is. With the semantic analysis, by using the semantic analysis, because it's having the static nature, so with the help of the semantic analysis, we implement the syntax directed translation. After generating the parse tree. Then the next step is implementation of the translation schemas, or designing of the translation schemas. We know how many concepts that are there under the designing of the translation schema. That means the concept starts with the syntax directed translation, and to know how many ways of representing the semantic actions, where we learned about an syntax directed definition and the syntax directed translation schema. And after completion of that, then we entered to know about what the need of the semantic analysis is, and under the semantic analysis, and if you are having any type of an errors, how to detect those errors. For detecting those errors, what type of an techniques that we are performing here. What type of an technique means, type checking is a technique here, type conversion is a technique here, type expression is a technique here, right? So these are all the techniques under the semantic analysis. Why all these, why we are learning all these means, to find out the errors, to detect the errors. By knowing the concept of, or by knowing the context of each and every concept under the semantic analysis, then we can easily recognize the errors, and we can easily modify those errors, and finally we get an output as an error free output. That means here also we are generating an abstract syntax tree. But what type of an abstract syntax tree it is? It is an some modifications we done there, right? So we are calling that is a decorated abstract syntax tree. Without changing the structure, or without changing the representation or the meaning that we generated from the syntax analyzers, right? And in the next class, I will explain about the next phase of the compilers, that is an intermediate code generation. If you are well understand about these concepts, that is, up to now I completed 3 phases under the process of compilation: lexical analyzers, syntax analyzers, and semantic analyzers, right? And then we are entering into the 4th phase of the compilation process of compilation, that is intermediate code generator.